The plugins with Blender are called add-ons and can be found in the user preferences, which we can get to in the file menu, or we could use the shortcut key Ctrl-Alt-U there, or we can actually just switch a window to the user preferences as well. I'm just going to use the floating window that you get under the just initializing it here though. So here we go, we've got these add-ons tab here within the user preferences. This is a big long list on the right hand side of all the available add-ons which extend the features within Blender in this particular build. What we're looking at here is on the left hand side a filter, a kind of sort of filter, so we can type whatever we're looking for in there, for example, and it will just filter this, what we see on the right hand side there, or we could just choose some of these categories. This supported levels up here, by the way, all these are on at the moment, so we're seeing official community and testing types of add-ons in here. The differences between these are just who's going to get the bugs, really, who's going to resolve the issues, but otherwise there's no real difference there. You can get more information by just pulling down the options there, and we can see we get various different information here. This is going to, once we initialize this one, it's going to show up in the toolbar, and we've got a link here and we can report a bug for more information and so on. So we can also sort of filter by category here. So let's just take a look at the add mesh or add curve, for example. Here we've got the sapling, which is quite handy. So we can, this is a tree generator. We can also potentially, let's just have a look at the add mesh now. Let's say the bolt factory, for example. Let's see, maybe extra objects as well. So that's just basically going to allow us to add more objects. It's going to give us a longer list there. Maybe well, you can feel free to play with these yourselves. I'm just going to press Shift C just to center that cursor back into the center of the world there, and press Shift A to bring up our add menu. And we can see under mesh now we've got the bolt factory here and the extra objects like gears and gemstones and so on. So let's just take a look at a gear, see what that's going to do. I'm just going to pull up the toolbox at the bottom there, and we can see we can change many of the different settings that we've got there. So that's quite useful to have that as a kind of a primitive. I'm just going to delete that now, press Shift A, and then we've got these bolts as well, which is going to give us, again, the same kind of idea here. Lots of different options. Maybe we want a nut instead of a bolt, and so on. So there's lots of options there. Also, there was the tree generator under curves, add tree, and then that's given us this tree here. We could have geometry, leaves, shoulder leaves. So we've got those leaves there now. That won't show up until we render properly. Pruning leaves. So basically there's lots of things there without getting into various different things that we can tweak with one particular add-on. But yeah, these are definitely very useful, and if you're familiar with Python, and which is what many of these particular add-ons are scripted in, you can, if we just bring up our user preferences again, we can see at the bottom of the add-ons here we've got install add-on and the development guides. So these are some links here that will, well, the development guides is some links there which will take you to some more information about how to develop these add-ons, and if you basically want to extend the feature set for yourself, or you've got some very specific ideas, or you miss a particular tool that you think might be quite easy to simply implement. So yeah, there's plenty of ways in which we can sort of all contribute to it, which is quite a useful nature of the way that Blender is open source. But I definitely encourage just looking through the add-ons and basically have some fun with all the various different settings that you can do with that. A particularly useful area within Blender is the Modifiers tab, which is this spanner icon over here in the Properties window. This is dependent on what object we have available. So for example, if I select this curve now, we can see we get we don't get the particles tab up there. If I get this this metaball here, we don't get the so we don't get the particles or the modifier tab showing up. But if we select this mesh object, we get pretty much everything in there. And also, the contents of this modifier list can be shown if we click on this pull-down menu now, and we can see we get all these various modifiers organized by categories here. Notice that if we select this curve object over there, we get a different selection of modifiers that show up. So if you are routing for a particular modifier, just make sure you've got the type of object that you're going to apply that modifier to selected, so you can get to definitely get the right amount of, or the right selection of modifiers that are available in here. So one of the most commonly used modifier within here is the subdivision surface. If you just click on that now, we can see by default it's set to 1 in the view, and it will render out two sets of divisions. This is set to 2 different algorithms here. We've just got a simple, which will just add more geometry to it, and this Catmull-Clark, which will try and smooth between the vertices. If I just press Z to toggle the to move into wireframe mode there, we can see exactly how much geometry has been added there. In fact, if I just come to the object and display and just put the wireframe on there so we can see what's going on exactly, move back to the spanner icon for the modifiers. So this is quite simple, and this is the more averaged distance between vertices. So in other words, if we crank this up, we get a much more smoother result. It ends up going on much more sphere-like. And to be able to apply this modifier, we just click apply, and now that removes the modifier but applies those changes in a sense. I'm just going to undo that with Control Z. One last thing is we've got these typical settings up here. So we've got whether we want to be able to see the results of the modifier in the render or the viewport. And then we've also got this icon at the far right, which is just to do with whether we want to be able to enter into edit mode with the tab key, and we can see we're still getting the old geometry. If we just click on this, we can see the actual results while we edit, and otherwise we just have this use modifier while in the edit mode, so we can actually just toggle it on and off altogether. So those are some basic things within the modifier. There's obviously a whole lot more here to play with, and you'll probably find quite useful, and potentially some quite common settings are in there as well, so it's definitely worth checking out. So that's just a basic overview of some modifiers within Blender. To maximize a window within Blender is really easy. We just need to make sure the cursor is contained within the window we want to maximize, and then just press Shift Space, and that will essentially just toggle that back and forth. Because everything's a window within Blender practically, we can maximize practically everything. So we can come over to the outliner, press Shift Space, and then that will maximize that, or the properties, or the timeline maybe, or even the info window there. We can see that that's expanded the whole view and duplicated the header to the bottom as well. If I just left click and drag to the left just to duplicate this 3D view here and switch that to a text editor, create a new document. If I press Shift Space in here, nothing's going to happen. It's not going to maximize that view because Shift and Space obviously is going to be used within this text editor, so that might become confusing. There's a second way in which we can maximize all the windows within Blender, and we can do that with Control and then the up or down arrow keys. So it doesn't matter which one you use there. It could be up or down. That'll just toggle. They'll both toggle that between maximized and minimized like that. Just while we're talking about the up and down arrow keys here, the Control and left and right arrow keys is just going to toggle us through these default views that we have here. For example, we've got the standard default view, but we've also got these other views that come as standard, and which we can use the Control and left and right arrow keys to scroll through. And also we can create some of our own up here if we want to be able to just quickly toggle between particular views. So that's basically just a couple of ways in which we can maximize windows within Blender. Occasionally it could be quite useful to be able to place an image in the background of the viewport, either to model against or to use as some kind of reference. The settings to do this can be found in the properties sidebar. Down at the bottom here we can see we've got a background images section. We just check that box there and then add an image, and then we can see we've not got an image set right now, but if we were to just navigate to wherever the image is that we wanted to use as a reference, or the background image, we could just open up the file dialog there, or we could just use an image that's already in the scene that is somewhere within Blender. I'm just going to use this G15 image at the moment, which I already have loaded, so I'm just going to click that there. And now that's we get some more settings now, like opacity, and then we can offset, or just fairly standard and straightforward options there. I'm just going to I've just got a UV image editor hit open at the moment. This is basically what that G15 image looks like, by the way. I'm just going to close that over there just for a moment. So as you can see, we've got this axis all views, but we obviously don't see anything in the viewport. So what's going on there? Basically what I think is happening here is all the views are related to these ones that are listed here, these 7. So we've got these 6 orthographic views here and a camera view, and this obviously isn't a camera view because there's our camera over there, and it's a user perspective view, so this isn't any of the orthographic views. If we were to look through an orthographic view, like for example number 1, or maybe select it from here, so it's numpad 1 or any of these, and we can see now we've got that image in our viewport now in the background, and now we can just go Shift A, maybe add a cube, and then I'm just in wireframe mode at the moment, but we can see we've got our cube there, which we can now start to do something with in reference to this background image. And as I say, it's just set to all views at the moment, but we could switch that to wherever we liked. For example, if I pressed 0 to get to the this active camera, we can see the images in there as well. By default, obviously, if you start to rotate, the camera doesn't come with you. So if we just change this setting up here, lock camera to view, we can see now that the image is following wherever we happen to be. If you just want to zoom in on the view slightly, just uncheck that. Just use the middle mouse to zoom in, and then lock it again, and then we can see that's basically taken effect again. We can just maybe just go full screen and do whatever we need to do, and then maybe just drop the opacity slightly perhaps, and just you can sort of see the scene a little bit better there. So that's basically all I wanted to cover just for the moment regarding some background images within Blender. There are many differences between the mesh system between Maya and Blender, but there is one which is actually quite simple to point out, but I just really want to give this some special mention here, and it may have been mentioned elsewhere, but it's so important I just want to kind of give as much attention to it as possible. But this is particularly if you're used to coming from Maya in the way that works in its mesh system. So what I'm talking about is the fact that if we were to enter into edit mode now, or component mode in Maya, and we wanted to try and delete all the objects, all the mesh detail within the object, it basically wouldn't allow us to do that. It always wants a face in the scene somewhere, a single triangle, at least it wants a single triangle in the scene. If we were to do this in Blender and just delete all the vertices, it would allow us to do that. We can see in the info window here, 0 tries, 0 everything. I'm just going to undo that with Control Z. But within Maya, as I say, that wouldn't allow us to do this. Now, on the surface of things, you might think, well, that's not really that a tragic difference. You know, it's nothing that people need to really worry about too much. But where this becomes a little bit more important is if I actually just grab these 2 vertices there and delete them. You can see we now just have this single edge, that edge there in the scene. So again, Maya would have a problem with this, but Blender it's got no problem. In fact, if we now try and delete that vertex, we now just simply have this vertex in space, and that again would be a problem in Maya. But if I just press E to extrude out from that vertex, you can see we've just created a new edge, and now we can extrude out from that, and then we can grab those 3 vertices and press F to just create that face now. So that's basically a way in which we could work in Blender, but as I say, Maya would not like us to do this. So again, it might not seem like it's that big a deal, but if I just delete this object, start again with another plane, and let's see, just grab the opposite corners of this particular plane and now press F to generate an edge between those vertices. all looks to be fine, but one of the problems is the fact that this hasn't split this face. It's just created an edge between those 2 points, as it's quite happy to do. But if I actually just grab this edge, subdivide it with W, and then subdivide, and now let's just grab that vertex that we had selected in the middle. I'm just going to press A to deselect everything, and right click that one there. You can see what's actually happened is it's literally just created that edge, and then we went and subdivided it. It's not touching this face at all. In fact, if we wanted to do that, what we would need to do, if we wanted to do a typical split along that face, we'd need to press J. And now that has created 2 faces, as you can see them there, represented with these 2 dots to show us that those are faces. In fact, we can see there, try is 2. But obviously there are more verts in the scene. There's this additional vertex just at the top here. So basically, just to warn really that that's the way in which the mesh system works. If you were worried about a mesh that you'd been working on and you thought maybe this has happened, and in most cases it probably won't. It's quite easy to avoid this sort of thing if you actually know how the mesh system works and the way that the different options available to you. But if you did want to just check, what we can do is we can just go down to the select menu within the 3D views header bar here, and then just select loose verts and edges. In fact, let me just deselect everything there just so that we can see it in action. Loose verts and edges. So if I just click this now, you can see it's basically just selected the problems there. Now, if I was to delete, all I'd need to do is press X and just delete the edges involved. And then that mesh is basically cleaned up again now. In fact, we can see it's back to what we might have expected there. It's 4 verts, 5 edges, 2 faces, and 2 tries, which is exactly what we can see there. So that's basically just a quick recap, or maybe it's an introduction to some people to that kind of behavior within Blender, and just a quick way of how to get around that if you think you might be in trouble in that way. So that should just sum up this video. An interesting object type that we can use within Blender is the Metaball, and what these are a kind of a procedurally generated object which, depending on its location in 3D space and its proximity to other Metaballs, will kind of change its shape. We'll demonstrate this in a second, of course. We can just find these with the Shift-A shortcut key, just to bring up the Add menu, and we can see our Metaballs there, or Meatballs as I sometimes read it for some reason. And in here we've got our basic primitives, so just going to select Ball, just as a simplest example really. So these are pretty good for certain types of maybe organic objects, as well as maybe certain types of special effects as well. So let's just add another one, because Metaballs don't really behave particularly interestingly without another Metaball in which to interact with. So let's just add another one there, and then just move this out of the way by clicking on the X-axis of the 3D manipulator there. And as you can see, as we've moved it away there, you can see it kind of interacting as it moves out of this circle of influence. We've kind of got this chunk of geometry in the center of everything, and this circle that comes around it. In fact, what we can do is we can tab into edit mode, and we can select either the inside ball there and just scale that up or down, or potentially just grab the whole thing with the outer circle there. So that's in the edit mode. While we're in edit mode, incidentally, in the properties window, we can see that we get some more settings. So if we just watch down here and we tab into edit mode, you can see we've got this active element, and then the type there, the stiffness, a couple of other options there. So these are kind of can be quite useful to interact with, and then convert this to a mesh object and maybe use it as the basis of a sculpt, perhaps. For example, maybe for some certain organic forms. But we can see that if I enter wireframe mode with the Z key, we can see that as you move this particular object, you can see kind of the wireframe updating as it kind of conforms and tries to calculate along like a sort of a grid that's specified internally. And we can kind of alter the density of that grid that it works and divides along with this resolution here. I'm just going to turn the numbers down just to increase the resolution, essentially, so we can see that that's getting quite dense now. So press Z to get back into shaded mode, and then we can see that we get quite a nice kind of fluid connection there. So if I just add one more, just go Shift A and then maybe use this cube one at the bottom, and then just maybe scale that down slightly, And so we've got that kind of semi-interesting object, and then really all we'd need to do is just go Alt-C and then go Mesh from Curve, and we can see it's taken the entire Metaballs, all Metaballs there, and just created this mesh object for us, which we can see there's the topology, which isn't especially clean in places. We're getting some unusual things going on there, but we could maybe then begin to clean it up with some remesh or some other options that you might like to employ. So that's basically just a very, very, very brief introduction to just the metaball type within Blender.